Hello, viewers. It's Josie. Welcome back to Eclectic Movie Reviews. And the Oscars are in 3 days on Sunday, March 2nd, the day as of the day of this recording. And because of that, I am going to do my annual thing where I pair most of the 10 Best Picture nominees to older movies or to other movies with similar themes to them. Because that's one thing I love to do is compare. Of course, I love comparing new movies to old movies because it helps shape my perspectives on them. And so starting with Anora, um the two some just so you know, some of these films I have more than one pairing with. Some of these films I only have one pairing with. Okay, so with Anora, the first pairing I'm going to talk about is Married to the Mob from 1988, directed by Jonathan Demme. So Angela DeMarco, yes, she has the same last name as me, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, has had enough of her marriage to mafia gangster husband Frank, aka the Cucumber, played by Alec Baldwin. She just can't take it anymore. She requests a divorce, but she's dismissed by him. And then after Frank the Cucumber is killed, she decides to begin a new life with her son in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And then Tony, aka the Tiger Russo, played by Dean Stockwell, the don of her husband's mafia group, always had a thing for Angela, and he tries to harass her for romantic affections. And then Tony's wife, Connie, played by Mercedes Ruehl, who some of you may know from The Fisher King, is actually convinced that Michelle Pfeiffer is having an affair with Dean Stockwell when she's not, so she has her eye on her. And then Michelle Pfeiffer's character gets a job at a hair salon, under the impression that Michelle Pfeiffer is actually Dean Stockwell's character's mistress, two FBI agents, Mike Downey, played by Matthew Modine, and Ed Benitez, played by Oliver Platt, investigate her situation so they can bust the tiger. Matthew Modine poses as Michelle Pfeiffer's neighbor, and then they start genuinely liking each other. And then, inevitably, more hijinks ensue. And then as Dean Stockwell's character tries to take Michelle Pfeiffer's character for himself, Mercedes Ruehl goes totally crazy, and it's hysterical. This movie is super fun. Both this and Anora have mobsters and romance, and then one with in a case where and they have madcap energies to them. Yeah, and Married to the Mob is available to watch on Tubi and Freevee and Pluto TV. And there's a great Kino Lorber Blu-ray that I rented from the library one time. So yeah, that's Married to the Mob. Next up is Ball of Fire from 1941, directed by Howard Hawks. This one, and this one was actually it's directed by Howard Hawks, but it's written by Billy Wilder and Charles Brackett. And some consider Anora to sort of be kind of like a modern day Billy Wilder film. I'd certainly make connections to The Apartment. And it would be interesting, since The Apartment is a Best Picture winner, of course, and if Anora were to win Best Picture, which seems very likely unless Conclave takes it, sort of similar films there, but about Ball of Fire from 1941, the film begins with a group of college professors trying to write an encyclopedia. Professor Berman Potts, played by Gary Cooper, has a goal of developing a deeper understanding of contemporary slang and lingo. In order to do that, he visits a nightclub where he meets a burlesque singer named Sugarpuss O'Shea, played by Barbara Stanwyck, and then they're immediately smitten with each other. Little does Professor Potts know that Sugarpuss is engaged to a mobster that the police are searching for, and Barbara Stanwyck's character Bob bonds with Gary Cooper's character and the rest of the professors in sort of a Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs kind of fashion. And yeah, this movie is such a romantic delight. It's so fun, funny, and yeah, actually, it's available to watch on Canopy, and I don't know if there's a Blu-ray. Oh, Ballfire's available to watch on Peacock and Prime. Great. For those, for those of you, if to get a chance, definitely watch it. And I talked about these two films on with David Rosen on the Piecing It Together podcast. And then another film I considered pairing, but I ultimately decided to leave out was the David Cronenberg film Eastern Promises, because they both involve sex workers and the Russian gangsters. But next up, let's talk about The Brutalist. The pairings, the first pairing I have for The Brutalist is Tucker, the Man in His Dream from 1988, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. And it's interesting. I'm using this as a pairing because people thought that Megalopolis would be Francis Ford Coppola's return to form, if you will. I mean, actually, we're hoping, I should say, and then it turned out that another film about architecture would be the real obviously it's not a Coppola film, but like it feels like something from the 70s. So about Tucker, the Man in His Dream. So this is a fictionalized biography of Preston Tucker, a loving family man and designer of automobiles. After World War II, Preston Tucker has the goal of producing the greatest car ever made, surpassing the ones designed by Chrysler, Ford, and GM as far as safety features. He calls this car the Tucker Torpedo. And then similarly in The Brutalist, Laszlo Toss, Adrian Brody's character, wants to build buildings that are safe from erosion. And of course, with Tucker's goal, there are obstacles in the form of involvement from automobile industry tycoons. Additionally, there are issues in car manufacturing on top of investment fraud accusations, which lead to legal battle. And both The Brutalist and Tucker, the Man in His Dream, criticize how corporate powers at large take advantage of the dreams of innovators. And they show they depict issues of the physical creation of the product as well. And they both feature optimistic protagonists who go out of their way to achieve their dreams. And even if it's, even if it requires a lot of them, and they have to be reminded about the importance of their families. Yeah, this is an underrated Coppola. I definitely recommend it. It is available to watch on Tubi and Amazon Prime. So, that's Tucker, the Man in His Dream. And there's also a pretty good Blu-ray that I rented. Next up. Now, this one may sound like a stretch, but hear me out. The Devil's Advocate from 1997, directed by Taylor Hackford. Kevin Lomax, played by Keanu Reeves, is a lawyer with, at least so far, perfect track record of winning cases. He has a wife named Mary Ann, played by Charlize Theron, and so a super influential law firm takes Kevin under their wing for the selection of a jury. And the the leader of this firm is none other than John Milton, played by Al Pacino. And as Kevin works for Milton, Marianne has these terrifying satanic visions and starts getting very sick. They escalate to more horrifying levels the more Kevin continues to work for Milton and be away from Marianne. And things get super wacky and twisty. I don't want to reveal what else happens, but the relationship between Keanu Reeves and Al Pacino's characters reminds me of that of Adrian Brody and Guy Pearce's characters. And these are both instances of a guy with whose career's on the rise, and he's got great aspirations, and then a higher power, if you will, manipulating him and trying to suck his soul away while their wife is sick and suffering at home. I could just picture a 2-film letterbox list with that title alone showing The Devil's Advocate and The Brutalist. In fact, I'll probably make it myself later. But yeah, and they're both taken under the wings of firms. I mean, law firm, architecture firm. Yeah, The Devil's Advocate is a great watch. Very suspenseful. And it's a wild movie, but it's also a good twisty thriller. The Devil's Advocate is available to watch for free on Plex, and there is also a Blu-ray and DVD. I would love to see this get a 4K. For okay, so that's Brutalist, my pairings for The Brutalist. For Conclave, the 2 films I'm going to talk about are The Best Man and... Okay, so let's start with The Best Man from 1964. This is directed by... The Best Man is directed by... It's from 1964, so 60 years. Perfect timing. Franklin J. Schaffner, who directed Papillon and Patton, The Boys from Brazil, and Planet of the Apes. So, in this election drama, the current Secretary of State, William Russell, played by Henry Fonda, and his Senator, Joe Cantwell, played by Cliff Robertson, are running against each other and 3 other men. There are 5 men running for the presidential primary nominations. Both men have their strengths and weaknesses. Henry Fonda's character is a brainy, analytical type, but has had issues of infidelity with his wife. And a flaw of Russell is that his reliance on intellect can lead to major indecision. And then on the other hand, Cantwell is more of a person, but not as intelligent as Russell. Art Hochstader, played by Lee Tracy, the previous president, is closer with Russell, and he's not a fan of Cantwell. However, he puts his support behind Cantwell because he believes that he's tougher and could stick to his guns better as far as being a decision maker. Of course, backstabbing and smear campaigning occurs just like in Conclave, and it also, it shows how election processes work, and and they also, despite have are pretty, despite showing the flaws in our electoral systems, they oddly end pretty hopeful about the future. I would say Conclave a little more so, though I guess you can debate that a bit. But yeah, The Best Man is a really good election drama. Brian Sauer talked about it on Film Discovery's episode on Pure Cinema Podcast. So yeah. That's that. Next up is Heavens Above from 1963, directed by John and Roy Bolting. So John Smallwood, played by Peter Sellers, is a sweet, kind-hearted minister with only the best of intentions. By accident, he's designated to be the priest of a small, wealthy community called Orbiston Parva. The funny thing is that another priest with the same name was supposed to be a priest of that town. Orbiston Parva is basically run by an oligarch family called the Desbards. They have a factory for this special medicine called Tricholax, which is supposed to be a super antidepressant. Peter Sellers' character is quite progressive for a reverend at the time. He fights with the local townspeople to have free food. He hires a dustman of color to be a church warden, and he brings a homeless gypsy family into a church. Because of him, people get off welfare and actually begin working. This results in lower uses of Tricholax. Of course, the big pharma of the town is not happy about this, and not only does the church congregation realize that they appointed the wrong Smallwood, but this Smallwood is clearly too progressive. Peter Sellers' character even brings to light the hypocrisy of the church and those of the town. Both this and Conclave critique church politics and question both the role of the church and that the church can evolve with the times and be more progressive. That's one of the biggest themes in Conclave. So Heavens Above, I rented on DVD. I think let me see if you can rent it for a couple dollars. If not, there is a Blu-ray actually coming out of Heavens Above. I saw announced recently. Heavens Above. Let's see if it's available to rent anywhere. It is not. So it's only available on DVD. You can get it from a library, whether that be on your shelf or interloan, or you could and yeah, it's a Blu-ray release is coming, and it's about time because it's a pretty relevant film to this day. Next up is For Dune Part 2. Okay. This was, I don't want to say tricky, but I didn't want to necessarily go with another space set movie. I mean, this is sort of space, not really space setting. You'll see. Now, I first heard about the pairing I'm going to talk about, from Roger Avery 2 years ago. On the 2022 Film Discoveries episode on I forget which podcast it was. It might have been The Movies That Made Me, or I don't remember what it was. But anyway, Roger Avery talked about this film called The Visitor from 1979, directed by Giulio Paradisi. So Jerzy Kolsowitz, I don't know how to pronounce the character's name, played by John Huston, is a major intergalactic figure. He comes down to Earth with the goal of preventing a telekinetically gifted young girl named Katie, with a pet hawk, from bringing about a new generation of the Antichrist. Early in the film, a colleague of his discusses a bit of the history between the war that occurred between the Spatial Forces Zatine, which is like a satanic-like figure, and Yahweh, good figure. And Zatine fled to Earth, impregnating women and fathering several children, and those descendants are currently present on Earth. We are introduced to an Atlanta basketball team's owner, played by named Raymond Armstead, as he watches his team play. This man is associated with satanic worshippers, intending to bring about a new wave of Zatine, if you will. Raymond has a girlfriend named Barbara, who's the mother to a psychokinetic Katie. Raymond's satanic worshipping friends want him to father a son with Barbara, hoping that the son and Katie would have a sexual relationship. An incestuous sexual relationship, resulting in the birth of their savior. Quote, savior, like Dune. Once Katie acts as the conduit for their plan, things get bonkers. This movie is totally trippy and psychedelic. Dune was originally written as a critique of the search for religious and political saviorism. In an interview with Frank Herbert, an old interview with Frank Herbert, he said that charismatic leaders are a recipe for disaster. Now, I don't know if it was in the filmmaker's intention here, or because I believe this might have been based on a book, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but regardless, I don't know if it was the intention to critique religion, but both films certainly show how havoc is created when a group tries to force a savior into being. The Visitor is available to watch on Peacock, I believe, and Tubi, and on YouTube. Next up, for I'm Still Here. Missing from 1982, directed by Costa Gavras, Palme d'Or winning film, set around the same time of I'm Still Here in 1973, though in different country. Left-wing journalist Charles Horman disappears during a coup d'etat in Chile, and his father Ed, played by Jack Lemmon, and his wife Beth, played by Sissy Spacek, search for him. Salvador Allende was the president of Chile at the time, and the performances, and so they go search for him. I think they both know that he's dead. I mean, it's not really a spoiler to say that he's dead. It's more so like the journey they go on. That's more crux of the film. What's interesting is how Jack Lemmon's character, who's initially more conservative political views, shift as he learns the horrific truth about what happened to his son. And the performances of Jack Lemmon and Sissy Spacek here are excellent. And additionally, it similar to I'm Still Here, Missing critiques dictatorships and shines lights of the faults, and Missing also shines light on the faults of U.S. foreign policy. And I want to read a brief excerpt from the Criterion essay. The hero of Missing, like the hero of Z, like the two heroes of Amen, is a good man who changes his conformist politics, or more precisely, abandons his old political assumptions for the sake of justice, and what he learns of the truth. Ed Horman doesn't become less American than he was, and he has no interest in the coup or indeed in the possibility of the extent of the involvement of the United States, but he recognizes when he's being lied to, and he finds out how little he knows about what his government is doing, what it feels it has the right to do in his name. This is the real question, a key issue of the Nixon era and after. How secret does secret policy have to be, and how much secrecy is necessary? The American ambassador says to Ed Horman, "Let's level with each other, sir. If you hadn't been personally involved in this unfortunate incident, you'd be sitting at home complacent and more or less oblivious to all this." Ed Horman doesn't argue. And the movie invites us, alas, to disagree, since great regions of ignorance and complacency constitute the fullest context for the film, but to ask what follows from this obliviousness. The ambassador also makes clear that his job is to protect American interests, not individual Americans. And we can wonder how prevalent and acceptable this priority is, and whether it is not exactly upside down. And that's and the main character, Fernanda Torres's, in I'm Still Here, the character that she plays, it's mentioned because it's based on a true story, becomes an ambassador and a rights activist for Brazil, kind of like how Jack Lemmon's character becomes a similar sort of figure through his journey. Next up, I'm going to talk for Nickel Boys. Now, this is interesting because I did not go with the two films I picked are not African American stories. And you'd be thinking, why not? Why didn't she pick African American stories to pair with Nickel Boys? When I tell you the pairings, you will understand. Now, the Nickel Academy from operates in very similar sort of way to residential schools in Canada did. For those of you who don't know, residential schools were in Canada. They were boarding schools designed for for Indigenous children, basically to be taken away from their homes and be stripped away from their identities and like be taught Christianity because they were like helped run by churches. And the children in residential schools in Canada went through really horrific abuse. I believe the last one closed in 88. And in 1989, there was a TV movie called Where the Spirit Lives. Sorry, dropped my bookmark. Forgive me a second. So this directed by Bruce Pittman, and the story follows Ashcombe, First Nations girl, and she and her brother are taken away from their family to a residential school where students are forced to learn the English language, adhere to Catholic ideas in a bigoted, abusive manner. Sticking to the Western Eurocentric agenda the school pushes, Ashcombe changes her name to Amelia. She befriends a fellow student named Anataki, and that's kind of like the friendship between Elwood and Turner in Nickel Boys. And then, despite the school being an abusive setting, Ashcombe/Amelia develops a close friendship with her teacher, Kathleen. And then Ashcombe is so tenacious with her bravery and resilience as far as speaking up for her freedom and individuality. Yeah, it's a very informative watch, and this is the perfect movie to show in schools. And I admit there are parts of Where the Spirit Lives that, like, there are certain lines of dialogue that are kind of cheesy, but I think it was for its time, a very progressive film, and it's a real touching one, and features really great performances from the kid actors. It's available to watch on YouTube. So, and then next up, another sort of residential set movie, Rhymes for Young Ghouls from 2013, directed by Jeff Barnaby. Rest in peace. He died of cancer a few years ago. Set in the Red Crow Meekock Reservation in 1976. Native children 16 and under by law must go to residential schools. In Crow, the designated residential school is St. Dipna's, run by the ruthlessly cruel and abusive Indian agent named Popper. The protagonist of the story is Ayla, played by Devery Jacobs. The film actually begins with a flashback 7 years prior when her younger brother was killed by her mother in a car accident by accident. Her mother was drunk and she killed him in a drunk driving incident, and then her mother committed suicide because she was so devastated. Then Ayla's father took her mother's fall and went to prison. Cut to 1976. Ayla assists her uncle Berner with his drug dealing business. Her father is back from his jail sentence. Ayla's intention with the money is to bribe the ruthlessly sadistic Indian agents for St. Dipna's School agent Popper. I brought up his name earlier. Action for justice must be taken when her money is stolen. And what's interesting is how Jeff Barnaby incorporates horror realism into the narrative. And there's some flashback scenes of Ayla's father's experiences of abuse in the residential schools. both the Nickel Academy and the Indian residential schools, as I said, stripped identities from minority students through these abuse tactics. Nickel Boys and Rhymes for Young Ghouls both explore identity and history as an intangible element that cannot be taken away. In Rhymes for Young Ghouls, this is represented through the spiritual folklore elements, the ghosts of the ancestors that guide Ayla. In Nickel Boys, it is represented as the enduring friendship/reverence that Turner and Elwood have for each other, even when they no longer attend the Nickel Academy. For the substance, the first film, I'm talking about 2.5 movies here. And I'm saying half because you'll understand why. The first film I'm going to talk about is Eyes Without a Face from 1960, directed by Georges Franju. Dr. Genesier, is remorseful after the car incident that led to his formerly beautiful daughter Christiane's facial disfigurement. He makes her wear a mask. People on the outside believe her to have died in the incident. With the assistance of a lab partner, Louise, the doctor abducts beautiful young women and removes their faces to transplant them onto Christiane's. This is a disturbingly gruesome fable that critiques the male idea of women's beauty. Sarah Clements, a frequent contributor to the Next Best Picture podcast, wrote on Letterboxd, "The doctor in this movie created the substance." And then I'm going to read an excerpt from Wesley Lara's Bloody Disgusting essay. This was released 3 years before Blood Feast, but the dissection and decay of the human body feels like body horror as its most primal. Even with her new face, Christiane cannot enjoy the luxury for long, with a brief slideshow documenting her body rejecting the face and gradually looking scarred and moldy. The consequences of achieving this distorted idea of beauty rear their ugly heads. What is more body horror than a dead woman's face rotting on the top of your own face? Body horror is amplified once we accept how truly powerless we can be in some situations. That's kind of like how, even though Elizabeth takes the substance and, her younger, more beautiful self takes control, is on the show Pump It Up at all. The real Elizabeth is getting older and sicker. And then Elizabeth also becomes powerless to her reliance upon the substance. And then in the essay, Wesley Lara goes on to explain how although the level of gore is not as extreme as what we see in contemporary horror, the themes of beauty and acceptance or lack thereof are what make the film so horrific. And next up, The Witch's Mirror from 1962, directed by Shano Ureta. It's spelled like Urueta. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's a Mexican horror film. We are introduced to Sarah, a housekeeper/witch. Her goddaughter named Elena is married to a doctor named Eduardo. Sarah has a magic mirror that reveals that Eduardo will murder Elena. Despite this alarming prediction, Sarah advises Elena not to intervene with fate and accept her death. Eduardo kills Elena via poisoning her drink, and then Sarah communicates with Elena's ghost through her magic mirror, declaring that she will try to bring justice. There is a time jump. Eduardo is remarried to a woman named Deborah. Elena's spirit eventually terrorizes Deborah, and then she ends up getting burned. Work is done to heal Deborah's face and hands. Then I don't want to go beyond there. Both The Witch's Mirror and The Substance are tragedies that explore beauty and transformation. And they also sort of have evil body doubles, if you will, if that makes sense. And then the last sort of mini thing I want to bring up for The Substance is the Haunted Mask episode of Goosebumps. A childhood favorite of my brother and I, a lot of people's. A girl named Carly Beth is bullied a lot. Intending to get back at the bullies on Halloween, she purchases a scary monster mask from a scary store. and then the mask puts a spell on her, and she starts acting in monstrous ways herself. I don't want to reveal the ending of The Haunted Mask, but both The Substance and The Haunted Mask are examinations of the importance of self-love and why we shouldn't go about life without it. And what's really interesting is that a major theme I noticed this year in the movies of 2024 was the human body. I mean, you got The Substance, it was all about the human body. A Different Man, about the face and presenting that. And of course, facial disfigurement. There's, Honora, the body of obviously the body of a stripper. You got in The Brutalist, Adrian Brody's wife has osteoporosis, and he struggles with heroin, and so again, the body. And in Wicked, green skin. And I think that's just a reminder that, we need to take care of our bodies, put our health first. And that's something that I, along with all of us, are learning how to do, and continue and will continue how to do. And as we gotta love and take care of ourselves. I know that's sounds like a cliche buzzword by now, but it's the truth. For Wicked, last but not least, the first film I'm going to talk about is The Girl on the Broomstick from 1972, directed by with a Czechoslovakian film directed by Vaclav. I'm actually talking about two Czech films here, believe it or not. Vaclav Vorlicek. I can't pronounce the director's name, but in the magic realm, if you will, Saxana is a teenager learning witchcraft. Because she struggles with the art, she's sent to detention for 300 years. Through a spell, she enters the land of human beings. She's mentored into the human world through the assistance of the school custodian. She befriends a boy named Hansa, and he helps her out too. And 3 troublemaking boys try to trick her into transforming the teachers at the school into rabbits, claiming that they will assist her in staying in the human world in return. So it's like the Czech Sabrina the Teenage Witch. So both this and Wicked teach girls to be who they are. And they're both, involve school and witchcraft. Next up is Green Gold, or aka The Hot Pickers, from 1964, directed by Ladislav Reichman. Oh, I should mention that The Girl on the Broomstick, I watched on the Criterion Channel, but I believe, let me check its availability. Is it? Let's see if it's on YouTube. I don't think it's streaming anywhere, but it was on the Criterion Channel. I don't know if it still is, but someone's got to put it out on Blu-ray. Anyway, back to the Green Gold, aka the Hot Pickers. This is a Czech musical set during hot picking season. Hot picking, for those of you who don't know, is picking out hops for beer making. We are introduced to Philip. He's an intellectual type who enjoys reading and studying over trying to be like the other schoolboys, let alone spending time with them. Being introverted, his special place is the attic. He has a rival named Hansa, another character named Hansa, who constantly bullies them. There's a teacher who often scolds Philip for being late. While hot picking, Philip meets a girl named Hanka, and the two fall in love. And however, they must keep their relationship a secret from the field owners. When Hansa finds out, he gets jealous over the fact that a beautiful girl named Hanka fall for brains over macho-ness. Such a delightful romantic musical filled with such liveliness. And the color palette with the costuming and the props it pops so vibrantly. No, that rhyme was not intended, though maybe it should since I'm talking about a musical. And this film also has commentary on the collapse of Stalinism. Somebody on Letterboxd called it West Soviet Story. And I think if you like Czech New Wave cinema and the films of Jacques Demy, particularly his musicals, then definitely check this one out if you have the Criterion Channel. If it's still on there. I would imagine this would look amazing on a Blu-ray transfer. And similar to Wicked, it critiques totalitarian regimes, and, it's a school narrative with a little bit of romance. So those are my pairings. I did not choose any pairing thing to pair Complete Unknown or Amelia Perez with because I don't have a lot of passion for those movies. But I really enjoyed coming up with these pairings as I do each year. Let me just run down my pairings real quick. Married to the Mob. Honora, Married to the Mob, and Ball of Fire. For The Brutalist, Tucker the Man in His Dream and The Devil's Advocate. For Conclave, The Best Man and Heavens Above. For Dune Part 2, The Visitor. 1979, not the Richard Jenkins one. I'm Still Here, Missing. The 1982 one, not the other one. The one that came out a couple years ago. For Nickel Boys, Where the Spirit Lives and Rhymes for Young Ghouls. For The Substance, Eyes Without a Face, The Witch's Mirror, and Haunted Mask episode of Goosebumps. Finally, for Wicked, The Girl on the Broomstick, and Green Gold, aka The Hot Pickers. Well, happy Oscar weekend. Thank you for watching. Let cinema live. Goodbye for now.